Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Fred Razak at CMTrading. Today is October 27, 2022, and today is Thursday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, Google tumbles while the Dow Jones actually surges higher. We're going to take a look at that and see why in just a second. But looking at the major economic events of today, at 2:15 South African time, out of the European Union, we have the European Central Bank coming out with the main refinancing rate. That is an interest rate decision, so that's a major number coming out. Now looking at the various markets, starting out with the Forex symbols, the major pairs rally versus the US dollar while it's getting weaker. Looking at the indices, the Dow Jones rallies while the NASDAQ actually tumbles on technology stocks missing their earnings. Now looking at commodities, gold consolidates while oil gets a slight gain. And it's the stocks, it's the FAANG stocks that tumbled based on earning reports. And lastly, Bitcoin steady above 20K. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. All right, so the first order of business I want to cover is the Euro USD. Why? Well, because this interest rate decision is coming out, and the most important thing to trade when you're looking to trade something with the interest rates is the actual currency that is being traded on that particular financing rate. So we're at the top of the range. Okay, now this is very tricky because what's going to happen here is either we're going to have this number coming out and then we're going to see a sell-off, or you're going to see a breakout. But it's always when they do this, they kind of pump it to the top range and then they bring it down. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but just be aware of it, that potentially that could happen as we've come to this plateau of 1 versus the euro to the dollar, and we're just above it. We're at 67, so it's about 67 pips above that level, but it's a big step up from our 95 level that we hit back in September, and then hitting a low again at the beginning of October of 96, and then getting up to that party. So okay, so it's in a 400 pip range, which is very decent, and if you miss that initial move, you could still catch the next move. Now, a couple of things here. It looks like it's consolidating here at this level. Okay, why do I say that? Well, a couple of reasons. I'm not going to say that this is looks like it's bottoming out, at least for now. Two reasons. Right here, that was our crescendo of our resistance-ish level, and secondly, we're no longer in this move downwards. I mean, if you look at that trend line is actually being breached by pushing this higher than that level. Okay, that's my concern here, is that what we're doing is that we're breaching that level, and so we may be finding ourselves just trading in a range until this breaks out later. But this is something to consider, as it's been great. Okay, volatility is there. The character, it's been there. Those are two elements you want to see in a currency to trade in. Now, looking at the GBP, also raised versus the US dollar. I mean, this has been a big comeback for the GBP, almost hitting also parity to the dollar. So a 116 is a big comeback. The Aussie dollar also coming back a little bit here, and not as strong, which is a little bit of a surprise, because historically speaking, the Aussie was always stronger versus the dollar. Not always, but many times it was stronger than the dollar. USD CAD bottoming out here at 135 after this decent decline from our high of 139. And looking at the Japanese yen, also steady at 145, as you can see here, as this is topping out at 149 and then retracing down to 145. So we're seeing some tremendous volatility here as well, as this is coming closer to supportish level. Now jumping into commodities, let's take a look at gold. Gold trading here at 1662, a nice surge upwards, but consolidating at the top of the range, right? There's significant amount of resistance at 1675, so just be aware of it. Now looking at crude oil, also trading at $87, a nice little pump up, a couple of bucks on the upside there. Now looking at the US markets, this is where it gets very interesting. We're looking now at the Dow Jones trading at 32,013, okay, which is a nice run up, which we've had all the way back to these levels. Now yesterday we traded at 32,200, we sold off, and then we made ourselves back. Okay, so this is just an amazing move. Excuse me, this is going back to September, where we hit a top of 32,000 and then sold off, and then coming back almost to parity of it. Okay, so if we look at a weekly chart, you could see that move all together. Now, we do have a run up to this number next week. We do have an FOMC rate decision. So this could be the pump up before the dump. But this is something to consider as this is hitting the top range of it. Now, when we look at the individual stocks, okay, when we look at the NASDAQ, it's not as strong. NASDAQ actually moved down yesterday and did trade lower, even though the greater market traded higher. Why? Well, if we look at the individual stocks, Amazon sold off. Google really selling off. Let's take a look at it. Look at that big gap down from 104 down to 95 and then $94 a share. Look at that. I mean, you can't see it in the longer term. It's a little bit harder to see it, but we hit a high of 118 in this. Okay, so for this to tumble all the way down here is a big deal. Now looking at Microsoft also, big gap down and a sell-off to $230 a share. Now at a certain point, the indices are going to catch up to this, okay? Amazon also trading at 115, not all the way down, but showing some weakness here as well, whereas Intel is also just consolidating here. Cisco did sell off a little bit here at 44. So it's kind of like an interesting environment that we find ourselves, because when we look at JP Morgan, it's still strong, okay? Well, it's still strong because its returns were still fine, but it's going to be very interesting because on Friday, we're going to go into inflationary report, and then next Wednesday, we're going into the FOMC. So big numbers coming out. Expect lots of volatility, okay, from day-to-day purposes. Now, we may see a push-up as much as we can until that number actually comes out, so be aware of it. This is Fred Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.